Welcome to our first lesson on Bite-Sized Buddhism. On Bite-Sized Buddhism, we offer lessons on Buddhism for no more than 15 to 20 minutes. In this first lesson, we look briefly at the life of the Buddha and his teachings. The Buddha, as a religious founder, is quite different from other religious teachers and founders. As a founder of a religion, he does not claim to be God or to come from God. He said he is a human being. He also claims no inspiration from any external power as well. He said all his realizations, attainments, and achievements come from human effort and intelligence. In Buddhism, only a human being can become a Buddha. The Buddha was born as Siddhartha Gautama in the Republic of the Sakyans. The Sakyan clan is located in today's Lumbini in Nepal. It is also the birthplace of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. The Sakyan clan was a republic. The republic was made of many kings or chieftains in alliance, and Siddhartha Gautama's father was the leader of the alliance. His father's name was King Suddhodana. Siddhartha was married at age 16 to his cousin Yasodhara, who became his disciple later on and attained enlightenment. At the age of 28, Siddhartha had a son, his only son, whom he named Rahula, who later also joined a community of monks and practiced under his father and his father's disciples. As a youth, Siddhartha was kept in the palace to live a life of pleasures. He had palaces built for him for each of the seasons in a year. His father, King Suddhodana, was worried his son would one day become a religious leader, as prophesied by an ascetic, instead of becoming a great emperor, and so he tried his very best to keep suffering and impermanence out of Siddhartha's sight. But one day, Siddhartha managed to sneak out of the palace and he saw these four sights. They are the sight of a sick man, an old man, a dead man, and an ascetic. The first three sights made him realize that the life of pleasures is impermanent. Sooner or later, happiness from pleasures ends, and everyone suffers. And so he left his wife and newborn son at the age of 28 to find the end of suffering. Siddhartha had lived and learned the life of pleasures, and now he was living the life of the other extreme, the life of an ascetic. He lived on 1 grain of rice a day and tortured his body in order to free his mind. At that time, spiritual practitioners believed that the body is what weighs the mind down, so some of these practitioners tortured their bodies in order to free their mind. But despite attaining a very high level of concentration in meditation, Siddhartha was not enlightened, and he realized that he was dying. In his own words, Siddhartha said that when he touched his belly in front, he could feel his spine at the back. There was much pain when he sat on the ground, as he was reduced to just bones and flesh. Clumps of hair was falling off of his head. He was suffering from constant headaches, but he kept all of these sufferings in mindfulness. The future Buddha had 5 other ascetics practicing austerity with him, and they were cheering him on. Siddhartha was the most extreme in his practice amongst them. The 5 ascetics admired him and waited for him to attain enlightenment first. Then one day, a laywoman named Sujata was looking to pay respect to the tree spirit with a bowl of curd and milk in her hands. But instead she saw Siddhartha sitting under a tree. She thought he looked godlike and was probably a deva or an angel, and decided to offer him food. Siddhartha took the food and regained his strength. Seeing that he had abandoned his strict practice of just 1 grain of rice a day, the 5 ascetics abandoned him, thinking he has given up the goal of enlightenment and was going back to the life of pleasures. Instead, the future Buddha vowed to sit under the fig tree in Bodhgaya and determined never to get up unless he attained enlightenment. In the 6 hours in which he sat, he saw his past lives and the cause and effect of his own rebirths. He saw the cause and effect of other beings' rebirth. Lastly, he fought off Mara, regarded as the evil being in Buddhism. In actual fact, Mara is not an evil being, but the mind with its many illusions, ranging from desire, hate, and delusions. If we look at our own minds today, we may see many fears and anxiety arising from what may or may not be true from our own mind's conception. After enlightenment, Siddhartha was known as the Buddha, the enlightened and fully awakened one. He also referred to himself as Tathagata. What is the meaning of Tathagata? Tat in Tathagata in English means that. In Hinduism, there is a Sanskrit saying that says, Tat tuvam asi, you are that. It means, I am the subject while you are my object. Or, you are the subject and that is the object. You are that means that the object is the subject. Or the object and subject are one. But how can I, the subject, be one with you, my object? If we think about it, when we meet a new person, we create a first impression of the person in a very short time. We make a commentary of what we like and dislike, and all of these may be true or may not be true. Our impressions are based on our past beliefs, and we experience our impression of this person inside of us. Also, two people may look at the same situation very differently. The reason is because they have come from different cultures or life experiences and interests. A situation may make somebody very angry or cause not much feelings in another person at all, and this depends on the habits of our mind. So whatever we experience about the situation comes from inside of us. Our life experience is an inner one, not so much an outer one. Therefore, the object we perceive is a creation of our minds. What we see on the outside comes from the inside. The Buddha has become one with all, ending all duality. According to Buddhism, man's position in the cosmos is supreme. This is because man suffers both pains and pleasures. He or she knows both states of mind. Just as Siddhartha had experienced pleasures, he became disillusioned by how fleeting it is. He also saw pain awaiting pleasures. You may be in love today, but out of love tomorrow. You could be alive today, but gone tomorrow. Your decision made today is dependent on other people's decisions they make for themselves. This sense of disillusionment we experience as humans drives us to seek answers for relief from rapid changes and insecurities we experience in our lives. The difference between Buddhism and other religions, as you saw, is man is not inferior to any being. Unlike other religions, there is a higher being that judges man's destiny from above. Most people take refuge or safety in a higher being when, especially in times of uncertainty. However, the Buddha stressed that we should be a lamp unto ourselves, a refuge in ourselves. Only we can seek safety from the imperfections of life within ourselves. No one, not even the Buddha, can release us from life's insecurities and stresses. He is only a guide, and we have to walk the path of practice towards release or liberation on our own. He said, "You should do your work. The Tathagatas only teach the way." The Buddha encouraged individual responsibility. He never controlled or demanded his monks to listen to him or to depend on him. He also allowed the freedom of thought and for others to come to their own conclusions or views. There is an account of the Buddha visiting a place called Kesaputta, where the people who lived there were well-to-do and were intellectuals. They were known as the Kalamas. During those times, many spiritual and philosophical teachers visited Kesaputta to give talks. They do it to gain support for their schools and to get donations. The Kalamas were eager to see the Buddha. At that time, he already had a reputation for his rational and practical answers. Many Kalamas turned up and asked the Buddha, "What is truth? How should they live their lives towards happiness?" Many teachers visit them, explain their own doctrines and teachings, and criticize others' teachings as untruths. That left them perplexed and confused. The Buddha did not share his teachings to further confuse the Kalamas. Instead, he said, It is fitting for you to be perplexed, Kalamas, fitting for you to be in doubt. Doubt has arisen in you about a confusing matter. The Buddha continued, Come, Kalamas, do not go by oral tradition, lineage of teaching, hearsay, collection of scriptures, competence of speaker, guru. Do not simply believe because it's true logical reasoning, inferential reasoning, reason cogitation, or acceptance of a view just after pondering over it. By saying do not believe in these 10 ways in which we seek truth, from external source and internal source, what does this tell us about Buddhism? It tells us that Buddhism allows free inquiry and the freedom of thought. The Buddha did not want to further confuse the Kalamas and pointed to the Kalamas that they know for themselves if their action of speech and body are wholesome or unwholesome. This means we already have a built-in moral compass in our system. No one in the world encourages killing, stealing, or lying, right? Thus, we know in our hearts of hearts whether our actions causes happiness to ourselves and others or suffering. In another example, showing the Buddha encouraging free inquiry was before he passed into parinibbana. He asked the community of monks if they had any more questions for him. When they were silent, he asked them to pass the message to other monks to ask questions if they were uncomfortable in asking them themselves. Also, before he passed away, the Buddha encouraged individual responsibilities in his disciples. Venerable Ananda, the Buddha's cousin and personal attendant, asked him who should take over the community of monks after he is gone. The Buddha said he never thought of himself as a leader. He never thought of controlling the Sangha, also known as the community of Buddhist practitioners. He told the monks to take his teachings, known as the Dharma, as their guide and refuge. He urged them to strive hard in their practice towards Nibbana, the release of the mind from bondage. So in Buddhism, faith is different from how it is viewed in other religions in the world. The Buddha encouraged free inquiry and investigation in order to dispel doubt. He encouraged his students to check their teachers' conduct for their greed, hatred, and delusion. And through free inquiry and investigation, students gain confidence from their practice. The Buddha said, the path he teaches bear fruit in the here and now. It is through experience and investigation that a student of Buddhism gains confidence. And this confidence is the equivalent of faith in other religions. It is not by belief, but through inquiry, investigation, and experience. There are many beliefs in the world today as there were in the Buddha's time, and these dominant beliefs are classified into a few and they stay with us since the Buddha's time till today. One of the dominant beliefs is the view of materialism and nihilism. A materialist identifies with his or her body and other people's bodies. When the body is here, they can feel, sense, and touch it. But when the body is no longer here, they think it is no longer existent, and so they fall into the view of nihilism. Since something comes from nothing and goes back to nothing, those with this belief do not believe in causes and effects. The other dominant view is the view of eternalism. There is the belief of the mind and the body being separate. The mind is permanent, and there is only one life in which the mind goes to, which is either heaven or hell after death. The body is separate and is discarded. There is no individual responsibility here in a person's action in speech and body. This responsibility sits with a higher being who decides the fate of its followers. Buddhism sits in the middle. Everything around us is interdependent, including the mind and the body, which are not separate. We experience changes all the time. Nothing is fixed or permanent. Due to changes, there are causes and conditions, and effects. Due to changes, there are causes and effects. Our experience of life, whether pleasant or unpleasant, is dependent on our speech and actions, which produce further causes and effects. Therefore, it is important that each individual is responsible for his or her own actions, for the happiness of self and the happiness of others. And we have come to the end of today's lesson. Stay tuned for our next bite-sized lesson on Buddhism.